because a lot of them, especially women with psychosocial disabilities, they end up in mental asylums, and once you're in, and there's really no help and no recourse to anything. And another problem that we have found with psychosocial disabilities is it is a field of disability that is used against women in general. There have been, we found an incident report in a newspaper where a doctor in Agra used to take money from her men who wanted to get their wives certified, or their daughters or sisters, people wanting to get their female members certified as having psychosocial disabilities, and on the basis of that certificate have them locked up in mental institutions so that they would deprive them of their rights to property or to custody of children, or to use that as a fact against them in cases of divorce. I think from what I've been saying till now, it will be very clear that the abusers range from family members to neighbors, peers, strangers on the streets, staff of care homes, mental hospitals, carers on whom you are dependent, and many times the carer is the abuser. So the door to redress gets closed at that very point, because you're dependent on the carer to access your outside world. Healthcare professionals, there have been reports in newspapers where doctors have raped women on the pretext of doing an examination. And as I was mentioning, the case that we are doing, police and army also come within the range of abusers that we identified. Amongst this section of women with disabilities, there are many who suffer from what I would term as a double disadvantage, or you can say the triple disadvantage, because as somebody very rightly said, being a woman itself is a disadvantage. So you're a woman, you're disabled, and then you're from the lower caste. Or you're a woman, you're disabled, and you're in a conflict zone area. You're a woman, you're disabled, and you are dependent on a carer. Or you are a woman of a certain category of disability who are more prone to sexual violence, like women who have difficulties in communicating, intellectual disabilities, mental illness, or people who have speech and hearing impairments. So these were really the flag points. Another person was supposed to come and talk to you more about the recommendations that we presented to the Verma Committee. And the Verma Committee did take up a lot of those recommendations, including things like video recording of statements of women with disabilities, or engaging special educators or sign language interpreters if a woman with disability who requires that service comes in to a police station to lodge a complaint, or when the case goes to court. Because most of these cases, there have been some cases of rape of women with disabilities, especially women who've been deaf and mute, which have made it to the courts, but they've all resulted in acquittals because of the problem of collecting evidence from them, and the fact that communication becomes a barrier in collecting the right kind of information. Thank you very much.
Questions? Good question.
Just one thing. Women sterilized by force?
Yes.
Who makes those decisions? I read about drives by NGOs where they sterilize dogs, but I have never heard of women being sterilized. Does this come under the human rights laws? Who makes these decisions and why? Why can't the men be controlled for a change?
I do agree with you totally. Are made mostly by family members, parents, and unfortunately in India, parents groups are very pro forced sterilization of especially girls with intellectual disabilities, because they feel it is very difficult for them to keep an eye on what's happening all the time. And doctors are hand in glove with it. And doctors actually feel that they are helping the family by doing it, which is a very, very unfortunate thing. I remember a case had come to light in Pune years ago. I was much younger, where I think one mentally challenged girl had actually died. 4 or 5 girls were being forcibly sterilized in some back alley clinic in Pune, and one of them had died and her body was dumped, and that is how the matter had come to light. So once in a while we do hear of these reports, but yes, it does happen.
Will there be any laws to overcome this?
It is a human rights issue, and to be very honest, I think at HRLN, we in the Disability Rights Division, and I have some colleagues of mine from the Reproductive Rights Unit here, who are doing lots of cases on mass sterilization in India. We have all been hoping and waiting if we can find an instance or a case that comes to light, and then we can go to court with it and
I would just like
take
to
it forward.
There is a which is about sterilizations, on the issue of forced or uninformed sterilizations of women, and that is the case is pending, and I hope it covers women with disabilities. It does cover women with disabilities and the forced sterilization. So there is a PIL pending in the Supreme Court.
The bill is on women. So broadly, hopefully, we should be able to apply those same guidelines that the court will give to women with disabilities as well. But there is nothing specific on it at the moment, and it is a prevalent practice, unfortunately.
Any more questions?
But the topic is more centered around the sexual violence against women. Is it because violence against women ranges from a whole range of issues, and so with regard to disabled people, there has been one kind of violence which you talked about, Seema, is about women being categorized as mentally disabled, and then to throw them away from their property rights, etc. This also takes place in a lot of states have witch hunting cases in Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Assam, Jharkhand. These in all these cases, it's basically property rights issues, but women are termed as not being capable of taking mentally right decisions, and having influence and superstitious, or maybe more power over to influence other people's lives. So they have a dirty eye, or have a bad eye. So that's a range of that's also where mentally ill area, mentally disabled group of women are violated against their rights, or women are termed as mentally disabled, and so then they are violated.
I mean, actually, that when women are labeled like this and sent to mental asylum, that is when inside their sexual abuse starts to happen. And at one meeting where we were, there was a case which was mentioned, which actually did make it to the courts, where a woman was wrongly labeled like this and sent, and she complained to her lawyer, and then she was raped and then gang raped in the mental asylum inside. So it's one thing that leads to the next.
Thank you. I would now like to call upon Ms. Linda Metcalf, who is a friend of and has also worked with HRLN, contributed to our cases, research and analysis on a wide range of human rights issues. From the US Supreme Court, right?
Well, not exactly, but I think I'll speak as a part of a lead into the next panel, which will be talking about the reality of courts. And throughout this terrific day of multidisciplinary presentations, we've been talking on the one hand about the problems and some of the theoretical solutions that exist, but then the enforcement and implementation and the kind of reality on the ground that is so different from what exists even with the gap in tools that exists from the tools that actually exist. And I'm also, with no apologies, going to speak as a lawyer, very, conscious that, as I think we would all agree, law is one tool and by no means the only tool, or necessarily by no means the most important tool, but it is one important tool to challenge and eventually to reduce, though probably never eliminate, violence against women and sexual violence against women. The U.S., it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it, that the culture of sexual violence against women is worldwide. Everything that has been said here today, with the intensive focus on India after December 16th, I would tell you with conviction, could be said in the U.S., although we too have been struggling with this issue in a multidisciplinary way, in a social way, in a cultural way, at the family level, at the court level, at the Supreme Court level, for decades, if not centuries, as you have been. Certainly, there is absolutely still a culture of sexual violence against women in the U.S., and rather than citing kind of details of cases, let me just give you one example, because it's a kind of horrifically casual example, and that is that a congressman running for re-election last fall, barely 6 months ago, referred in a discussion of a woman's right to choose abortion, referred to cases of legitimate rape. Now I ask you to think about that phrase, legitimate rape. And said it with no consciousness, said it more than one time, and had no consciousness of what that term meant or didn't mean to him. Fortunately, he was defeated. I'd like to think that unconsciousness had a major thing to do with his defeat, but I'm not sure, because there were then people who sprung to his defense and characterized his remark, and he backed away from it. And there was a debate over that phrase. Why should there be even a